The immediate cause of the problems between our two countries, according to President Clinton, is the failure of Yugoslavia to agree to the terms of the negotiations in France, first at Rambouillet and then later at Paris. Why was it that Yugoslavia did not sign that agreement?
You used the word negotiated. There were no negotiations at all. And your audience have to know that. In all those 3 long weeks, 2 in Rambouillet and 1 in Paris, there was no one single meeting between delegations to talk to each other, Albanians and Serbs and others in state delegations couldn't exchange one single word. So there were not any negotiations. And look to delegations. On one side, you had a delegation of Serbia composed of everybody who was living in Kosovo and who lives in Kosovo, representatives of all national communities, Serbs, Albanians. 3 Albanian parties were represented in Serbian delegation. They are citizens of this country, of course, and that's so normal. Serbs, Albanians, Turks, Muslims, Gypsy, Egyptians, Goranci, all 7 of different national communities were represented in the delegation. On the other side, that was delegation of separation movement, not Albanian delegation. Albanians are in a delegation of Serbia as well. Delegation of separation movement, purely Albanian. And that's something which can explain the major differences in our approach. Our approach from the very beginning of talks was that Kosovo problem can be solved on the basis of principle of equality of all citizens living in the region and of equality of all national communities living in the region. So our approach is multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, insisting upon equality of national communities, regardless to their number. On the other side, there is an approach of your State Department in alliance with those guys from separation movement, which is favorizing Albanians, which is giving to them the right to be the masters of the rest of the population. And you must know what the structure of population is. In Kosovo, there are Serbs and Montenegrins, 250,000 of them, who were living there, and their grandfathers and grandfathers of their grandfathers lived there before one single Albanian came from the mountain. That is ancient Serbian territory, with thousands of Serbian monasteries and monuments and so on. But leave it aside. So 250,000 of Serbs, 200,000 of Muslims, 150,000 of Gypsy and Egyptians, about 50,000 of Turks, even Turks who are smallest national community in Kosovo. They have their schools, they have their radio and TV program, they have their editing house TAN, meaning day in Turkish language. What was the problem if there are only 50,000, comparing with, let us say, 800,000 to 900,000 Albanians? In terms of quality, they must have the same rights as national community, and they must participate in the institutions of Kosovo in an equal footing on the basis of that. And that was a crucial difference between those 2 approaches. Practically what was tried to be imposed in Rambouillet was not autonomy at all. That was independence. And I really don't believe if you show it to any honest American that there is one single honest American who will tell you that if they were on a place of our delegation, would sign that. We are talking on autonomy, we are talking on equality, on equal approach to interest of all national community, not on independence of Albanian separation movement, which had by that agreement, so-called agreement, practically the right to organize a new state within Serbia. They have their state, that is Albania. That is their national state. In Serbia, they are national minority. They are living everywhere in Serbia. And I want to add to you something very important. In Serbia, there are 26 different national minorities. There was never any problem with any of national minorities in Serbia, including Albanians. But problems were only with separation movement of Albanians in Kosovo. And we were making a big difference between separation movement in Kosovo and Albanian people, which is honest and good, patriarchal a little bit, what is not disadvantage, and which was the equal people in Yugoslavia. Even that separation movement was not using the arms before you came, before your representative came to tell them, to supply them, and to make the alliance with those killers, rapers, kidnappers, and drug dealers who were collected from the underground around Europe to be organized as so-called Kosovo Liberation Army, which never existed. That was a kind of Hollywood, you know, just to explain that they are having some kind of military forces and so on. They were never able even to attack any police or military unit. They were able only to kill somebody from the ambush. And they were clear terrorists. What else they could do? They were killing people from the ambush. They were putting bombs under cars or in front of markets. They are taking hostages, civilians, workers from the open mine near Pristina, for example. We never saw those hostages. We're afraid that all of them were killed. We don't know their destiny, where they were at the end. So there was no one single act of them which couldn't be clearly defined as terrorist act. And I was really surprised that NATO downgraded its dignity, making alliance with those killers and drug dealers. And I think that that kind of alliance cannot have the future.
The American people, though, every day see on their television all of these heart-wrenching scenes of the Albanian refugees. The United Nations says now that there are over 532,000 that have left Kosovo. And they appear to be in very traumatized type conditions. Is it your policy to expel all Albanians from Kosovo?
There was never policy of this country and my policy to expel any citizen of Yugoslavia from any part of this country. I must tell you, when there was a war in Croatia, we protected all Croats in Serbia. We protected, when there was a war in Bosnia, we protected all Muslims in Serbia. We preserved only multi-ethnic state within former Yugoslavia. That is Yugoslavia, Federal Republic of Yugoslavia today, with 26 different national communities. And many visitors, including high-level visitors visiting our country, were always saying that we are good example of positive treatment, of good treatment of national minorities. And we always had in mind that test for any democracy is treatment of minority, not treatment of majority. And that's the practice, that's the policy in Yugoslavia. And to answer your question about Albanian refugees, you are right, there are a lot of refugees, but they are a result of bombing. And they are not only Albanians. Everybody is running away because of bombing. Serbs, Turks, Gypsy, Muslims. Of course, Albanians, their number is biggest. Everybody is running. Deers are running. Birds are running. Everybody is running away because of bombing. Bees are running. Everybody is running away. And who can really ask to understand that civilian population cannot play the role of heroes, staying in their places when bombs are getting down? That is not possible. And you know that before 24th of March, when they started their damn bombing, and they started their dirty aggression against this country, there was no one single refugee. When they started bombing, refugees appears, of course, as a result of bombing, and everybody knows it. But connected with that bombing, you know, you are not throwing only bombs from your aircrafts. You are throwing small piece of paper with the messages of NATO, explaining that to our people. Do you know what we did with those small leaves with messages of NATO? They expected we will collect that and hide it from our citizens, not to see that. That was in our language, of course. We presented that on TV from both sides, all those leaves. We presented that on TV without any further explanation, because of the fact that 11 millions of citizens of this country, they know very well what's the truth. We are not afraid to broadcast propaganda of NATO thrown through those humiliating leaves, for them humiliating from their aircrafts. But problem is, in United States, you don't have protection. Our protection is the truth, and the fact that people knows what the situation is. In United States, average American cannot know what really is here. He must believe to propaganda. He must believe to those piles of lies which are broadcast every day.
Well, you know, that's one of the things about the media. We had a comedian in America in the 1920s, 1930s named Will Rogers that said, "All I know is what I read in the newspapers." Well, to modernize that, all the American people know is what they see on television and the images that they see on television. So how do you explain the fact that many of these refugees from Kosovo are talking about, we were driven out of our homes by the Serbs. The Serbs come and knock on our door, tell us that we have to leave within 10 minutes, and they take all of our possessions, and we have to leave. How do you explain when the American, or actually the NATO briefer, Jamie Shea, shows pictures on television that says, here are satellite pictures of what we believe to be mass graves? How do you explain these things?
Well, those who you saw on TV were told to say that. And by UČK, by that people, by those killers, rapers and kidnappers who are not terrorizing only Serbs and other non-Albanian population in Kosovo. They are terrorizing Albanians as well. I must tell you, it is a tragic situation with Albanians in Kosovo. They are manipulated and they are terrorized by those killers and kidnappers, those rapers, those narco dealers. I will tell you a simple fact. When you look to the number of peaceful citizens killed by UČK in Kosovo, the number of Albanians who were killed by that so-called Kosovo Liberation Army belongers is twice bigger than number of Serbs. They were killing Albanians to discipline them, to send a message to them that they all have to support them, that they all have to pay to them fees they ordered, and that all have to be recruited or to pay instead if they are called under their so-called flag. So what simple, peaceful Albanian, average Albanian can stay if he is told to stay that, otherwise he would be killed. He will stay whatever they want for them to stay. But that was not the truth. We saw a lot of their explanations on TV, just leaving country on territory of Republic of Macedonia, saying, a lot of them were asked, why you are getting here? Everybody was explaining, bombs are falling down, how to stay there. That was explanation. But about CNN, you know, I saw my own eyes at the beginning of this war on CNN, poor Albanian refugees walking through the snow and suffering a lot. And you know, in Kosovo there was spring, no snow, and that was explanation for informations from CNN. We are looking to CNN. Practically everybody can see CNN all the time. CNN, Sky, BBC, everything is seen here. So nothing special. They are paid to lie. That is in nowadays media, I believe, is even most dangerous arm than those bombs or rockets. That is most dangerous arm. And they started with that media war or that propaganda war long before they started military war. But we said publicly we have organized return of those refugees, but we cannot count with the ending of bombing, and people is afraid. One pretty big number who was getting back was bombed by NATO aircrafts. 75 citizens, all Albanians, were killed, and several dozens were wounded badly. So how to restore their confidence into safety if they are exposed to be bombed that way? Nobody could make the mistake in a sunny day and to confuse between ordinary tractors and peasants with the tanks or military units. That was out of question. And I believe that was done by purpose, to send message to them that it is not their business to come back. NATO is creating refugees. That is their tactic, to create as much refugees as possible, to empty Kosovo if possible, to have a lot of refugees outside, and then to say that is the alibi for NATO to get here to help, to deliver humanitarian help, to help those refugees to get back. They can't get back immediately. Only obstacle to them is NATO bombing. Only obstacle to political process which is going on despite that bombing is bombing.
Let's talk about the political process. Obviously, there are a lot of people on both sides of this issue, even people in America that are concerned about continuing a maximum position of NATO and trying to solve this thing solely by military means, because they think the cost in terms of economic costs and in terms of the human cost, both to your country and to our country, may be much higher than either one of our peoples want to pay. And so I think both peoples would like to see some kind of political settlement to this situation. And if we hold to the maximum positions that each side has right now, there may not be any progress. It will delay progress. So what do you see as a possibility for some negotiated political settlement of this problem in the near term?
Well, I believe that when aggression stops, when bombing stops, then it will be very easy to continue political process. But taking into account experience from Rambouillet in Paris, it is so clear that negotiations have to be direct between those who will live in Kosovo, between representatives of national communities who live in Kosovo, not between government of Yugoslavia or government of Serbia and, let us say, representatives of international community. We said very clearly, we will welcome a civilian United Nations mission to witness what happened there and to witness the process of political settlement as well. And we always were open. Look to the facts. Before this war, we accepted, we received a verification mission of OSCE, biggest verification mission in history of OSCE, 2,000 of them, plus UNHCR personnel, plus International Red Cross, plus 1,000 journalists from all around the world, plus Kosovo Diplomatic Observation Mission composed of all diplomatic mission in the country. And who could tell us we were not open to international community in so small territory like Kosovo with so huge verification mission, OSCE and UNHCR, International Red Cross, all journalists, diplomats, and every road open to everybody. But that was not the goal. The goal was how to create instability and how to start bombing. In Rambouillet, as I said to you, we are not talking to Albanians. We are talking to Americans who would like to take our territory for themselves and for NATO. And Albanians were just excused for that. They were keeping them in a side room to be their alibi for doing those crimes which your government committed against our country and our people. And victims are not selectively chosen. Everybody is a victim. Predominantly children, women, old people, civilians. Civilians, civilians, and civilians. That's that.
Are you willing, and as part of an agreement, to reinstitute autonomy for Kosovo, similar to the autonomy that they had in 1989, up until 1989?
Of course, we will not change our position because of one simple fact. We had never any intention to cut any right to Albanians. They are our citizens. We don't have any idea to make damage to them. But it is clear they are living in this country. They cannot make part of territory of this country and turn it into independent state. If that formula, which was tried to be deployed here, get into practice in the world, I don't see any state in the world who could survive. Look to Europe. Look to Spain, look to France, look to Belgium, look to Italy, look to Africa. In Africa, there is no one single country who could survive if you allow that kind of separation movements to take let us say, a kind of legal support. So if that becomes practice, no one country will be safe. So we are not confronting that big power only in a position that we are defending ourselves. I think we are defending a right to be free and to be independent and right to live in peace. That is what we are doing.
Are you willing also, as part of some kind of negotiated settlement, to accept some kind of international presence that will verify for the world community that the things that were agreed to in terms of the autonomy for the Albanians and the rights of all citizens of Kosovo are being equitably implemented?
Of course, we are ready to accept UN civilian mission. Of course, without representatives of the countries who participated aggression against our country. We said that clearly. We are ready for that. We have nothing to hide.
And you're willing also to allow the international aid and charity missions to come back and do their jobs?
Absolutely. They are even now allowed to come back. But they are afraid. We never send them out. They were afraid from bombing. That is one of the explanations why they didn't stay in Kosovo, let us say, International Red Cross. They stayed everywhere in conflicts. But how to be safe from bombing? They fled Kosovo as civilians as well. They were not sent away. They simply went away to save their lives. Who can be protected by bombing?
And you're saying that even now, while the bombing is going on, if the international humanitarian Red Cross or other agencies want to come back to Kosovo, even now they would be allowed to come back?
Even now, International Red Cross and UNHCR can get back. I cannot tell you for every single humanitarian organization because of some so-called humanitarian organizations were organized to support terrorism or to support separation movement, being under coverage of that so-called humanitarian task. Our police arrested a couple of Australian care belongers who were organized spying network in Yugoslavia. They admitted that in front of camera. They said they are very sorry. They said that that was big damage to our country. They were spying for NATO to explain where are positions they have to bomb, what was the result of their bombing, and so on. They explain even that they have abused domestic personnel for that. So we believe that International Red Cross and UNHCR can cover all those needs if they want to help to refugees. And that is something which was never under any question. They can come whenever they want.